Hello, so this is my discussion post for What Are Emotions? And I watched the TED Talk The History of Emotions by Tiffany Smith, and I thought that that was an interesting approach talking about emotions. And she had started it off talking about how most of the time our emotions crowd together until it's hard to tell them apart. I can definitely relate to that. A lot of time, I would consider myself an emotional person to begin with, and then on top of that, I do feel as though I do feel a lot of emotions all at once, and that it's hard to pinpoint a single one, and that's why I will just resort to, oh, my life's a mess, I'm a mess, I'm a hot mess, and this kind of leads into her first main takeaway, which was wondering whether some cultures might feel an emotion more intensely just because they named the word. And I would have to agree with this because if you have a word laid out for specifically explaining like how you feel, then of course, and if it that for example in the English language we don't have a term to feel when you, for example, drop your purse in the ground and everything is out and everything falls out. Meanwhile, there is a word in Swedish that describes that feeling of chaos, but that specific type. And I think that, you can be more specific with how you feel and know what it means and translates in your own language. Therefore, in other cultures, it's easier to come to terms with how you're feeling with certain terms. She also mentioned like the Dutch word for being cozy and warm while it's wet and cold outside, and then also the term basorexia, which is the sudden urge to kiss someone. And she also talked about how as language changes, there's a history of emotions will change in response to culture changes, and as new words arise, new feelings will follow too. And she gave an interesting example with a soldier or a knight and also a soldier dying from nostalgia, literally the feeling of nostalgia, and that does sound funny to us now because back then it would bring people physical pain and sores and things like that. It was documented. However, now, because of technology and transportation and being able to communicate, even the feeling of homesickness is definitely different than it was back then. And so, when there's changes that are made in the future compared to the past, you definitely won't feel emotions the same way that you did, that people did before. For example, the nostalgia. And another interesting concept was, the third takeaway was spiritual religious practices that will bring emotion to life and then make it disappear. For example, the one she used was the term awumbuk, and it is when the heavy feeling after a guest leaves the household, and how there's just an unsettling feeling like that, and that there has to be a ritual performed, and that emotion is kind of expected and kind of brought upon themselves due to their spiritual beliefs, and just by the action of this, I guess, leaving the household, that makes them think like, oh, due to their beliefs, they think that there's all that the negative feelings, and they have to practice a ritual. And I think that was very interesting, and that that doesn't translate to all other cultures. And yeah, and yeah, that's all I have to say.